The Q1 2023 Dataslate dropped on March 30th. With it came some minor adjustments to the overall competitive game and some major changes to a handful of teams. These changes may show how the game will try to be balanced going forward. So let's take a look and see what changes Games Workshop deem necessary to keep the Kill Team game interesting for all of us players. From the overall rules, there is only really one change. Under the Critical Operations 2022 segment, they have upped the amount of main points scorable per game from 12 to 16. This should actually be really interesting. Critical Operations is the card set that was released near the end of last year in an effort to reassess the balance of side missions as well as how games are set up. This is an effort to put more focus on the competitive side of the game. My close group have been using this since the release, and I know it is hard for people at times to come across these cards. Hopefully Games Workshop can print enough for everyone to get them, or maybe offer an alternative when the supposed new app for 10th edition 40k is released. We shall see. That being said, most of the games my friends and I have played tend to be very close. In some instances, this was because of the 12-point cap on the main mission. We would normally enter the 4th turn with enough for both sides to potentially hit the cap on main points, or at least get close. Upping to 16 should allow for more dominant victories, since right now you can tactically decide to forego capturing as many points as you can early in lieu of setting up some good traps for turn 2. This should give some of the more mobile teams a little more advantage. We'll have to see how it shakes out in the meta, but I feel the Corsairs and potentially the Hierotek and even the Phobos might be among some of the teams to get some solid early game leads off this shift. The teams for Season 1 gained a few adjustments. First up, the Ork Kommandos. They are now given the ability to gain some extra numbers. Good for a horde-style squad. The main thing is that if you take a bomb squig, you can have a commando grot. This is actually kind of big. The bomb squig as an option for the commandos is one of the highest damage output units on the team. This makes it a massive area denial threat. However, tactically, it can't capture anything. It doesn't help with the scoring element of the game, so people usually forego this. Most of the time, a player will opt to just take another commando boy or potentially the grot as a backline capture unit. By being able to take the grot and the squig, a commando player can have the area denial threat and the point capture potential. A very solid buff to the commando team. The Legionary received a semi-nerf, more of a general rebalance. The mutagenic flesh ploy used to reduce normal damage by 1 down to a minimum of 2. That minimum is now 3. This simply retools the damage reduction to continue to help against heavier weapons and strong melee opponents, while not screwing over units that are a bit weaker. The Legionary meta tends to revolve around Nurgle in a lot of ways because of the 2 minimum damage they had. Making already hard to kill units even harder to kill tends to limit the fun of playing into them. Also, this meant that the other marks saw less use because of how strong Nurgle is. I'm saying this as a Legionary player. I'm okay with this semi-nerf. I understand some might really hate it, but they didn't take away our ability to upgrade a normal save to a crit, so Nurgle Legionary are still among some of the most durable units on the field. The Corsair Voidscarred also gained a little benefit this quarter. Their Gunner's Shredder gained Rending, putting it on par with the new Hand of the Archon Shredder. This feels like they are trying to give benefits beyond Blast to make the gun more appealing, since most players just use the armor-piercing gun instead, regardless of opponent choice. A good buff. Maybe we'll see more use out of this deceivingly powerful weapon. The Phobos buff, in my opinion, is very important to an overall sense of how Kill Team might be balanced going forward. I like the Phobos personally, the idea of an elite stealth team. The issue with them is the fact that their units have so many abilities that need action points to be used. As I keep saying, Kill Team is a game of points scoring. Phobos tend to do well when they don't need to pay to capture any points, but forcing them to decide between using a big ability or scoring main points tends to lower their chances at finding victory. So one of these 2 changes is huge when it comes to helping out this issue. First up though, the Guerrilla Battle Honor got a little adjustment. This mostly helps in the narrative campaign. The normal guerrilla warfare ability is untouched for matched play. The big thing though is that the strategic ploy called Vanguard also confers a 1-point reduction to performing either a mission action or pickup action. That is for a single mission or pickup action during the unit's activation. From the few times I've played the Phobos, Vanguard is what I would consider an always active ploy. The move speed benefits and traversal benefits make every unit surprisingly fast, so gaining the ability to capture points for free and perform mission functions on their side ops for free will open up a whole strategic world for them. I feel going forward, we are going to be seeing more action point use reduction out of elite teams. You'll understand what I'm inferring when we get to the Hierotek. Before that, the Gellerpox received another nerf. As a team, they are still super strong, but to further rein them in, Vulgrar can now only provide the team 1 extra command point by using his Lead the Infection ability. A slight nerf, and I feel there might still be more to come. We'll see how the team performs this quarter. The Elucidian Starstriders saw a reversal on a buff and a change to an alright ploy. First up, it appears the Voidsman Rotor Cannon no longer has the Relentless special rule, as it was removed from their list when compared to the prior Dataslate, so no more rerolls. You might not have noticed it at first. Games Workshop may need to include removed rules with a strike through to let people know when this happens. Another nerf comes in the form of reducing the support asset's ballistic skill back to what they were, except for the Archaeotech beam. The ballistic skill buff on the blast weapons was pretty hard to play against for lower health horde teams. Should make the Elucidian more fun to play against for some teams while allowing them to still have a solid anti-elite function. The last change they received is something I'm struggling to understand. It seems like a buff. Originally, Undaunted Explorers required the unit to be near an objective or the opponent's drop zone. This is gone from the description, so it seems map-wide. On top of this, they changed how the damage is reduced, if the wording is the complete change. I've seen some people talking about it as though it just changed one of the elements to the already existing ploy, but they aren't really clear on that in this data slate. So Undaunted Explorers can now only happen once per unit per turn instead of every time. But the big thing is that the total damage would be reduced by half, rounded up. Whereas before, it clearly stated that it was a single dice roll. This could actually be huge against elite teams. If the unit is hit by a bolter 3 times and was unable to save, the damage would originally only have been reduced by about 1, down to 8. Now the damage would be reduced from 9 to 5. Pretty good, but you'll have to keep track on which units already gained this reduction. Again, I'm not sure if this is what Games Workshop meant. A lot of the discourse I've been reading around this ability makes it sound like the only change is that you can only use what we already knew this ability to be once. But again, I feel like they would have said to just add that or change that specific part and not have included all the rest of what we're seeing here. Let me know in the comments below if someone did actually clarify this. One of my friends that plays the Elucidian would probably really want to know. These were all the Season 1 teams. Let's look in on Season 2. First up, the Imperial Navy Breachers finally got some adjustments. The Kinban got some massive overhauls in the last data slate, so we get to see what happens to the other team released with Into the Dark. Mostly though, they seem to be nerfs. If you use the Blitz tactical ploy, it used to allow you to retain some dice as crits or normal hits, depending. Now, if you use it, you are not allowed to reroll for the rest of the attacks. Bit of a trade-off. The Navi Grenadier had its final sentence deleted. Not gonna lie, not sure what that was. I don't have the book on hand. From what I gathered while watching the MetaWatch video, it seemed like that unit could use 2 grenades at the same time. I'm not too sure. Brace for Counterattack received a similar nerf to what the Legionary were hit with. Now the ability is more focused on reducing damage from big guns and stronger fighters while not destroying the usefulness of weaker units. The Intercession Squad got a minor nerf focusing on this similar damage reduction idea. Durable now only reduces a single critical hit by 1 damage down to a minimum of 3. It used to lower all critical hits by 1, making the already tanky Intercessors even harder to kill for some teams. This might bring them more in line with other elite teams. We'll have to see. The Hierotek Circle received yet another sizable buff. Again, like I brought up with the Phobos overview, it looks like the focus is on making teams with less units not need to use their actions on their own abilities so that the mission type doesn't screw them over. First up, the reanimation protocol is now 1d3 plus 3. Guaranteeing a revived unit will start at 4 health before receiving the living metal heal. You can also move the unit a square of distance from its death token and even change the unit's order now, drastically upping the revived unit's survivability. Still, you shouldn't rely on a unit resurrecting. There is no guarantee for this action. Also, both the Accelerator and the Reanimator have their roles as points capture units reinforced by also making their abilities not affect their action points. The Accelerator even gained range on its ability, doubling its distance up to a pentagon from a square. The Leader-esque type units now all have the benefits the Cryptic gained as well. 2 more wounds each and an enhanced ballistic skill and weapon skill across all their weapons. Originally, they just enhanced ballistic skill on the Cryptek, but the added weapon skill will help them a little in melee. They don't attack a lot normally, so they still won't be amazing in close range. The Despotek further gained a similar buff like the Cryptic from the last Dataslate. Its demand ability is now free, like the Cryptic's command ability. It will now be easier to hand out the free command reroll or to simply use it on itself, making the 2 APL unit feel like a 3. All of this plays into making the team feel more like a threat and allowing their abilities to find use even in maps where you have to pay for mission actions. This is going to be huge. But even bigger than this is one of the wildest changes to this team. Cryptek actions will now remain in play even after the turn has ended. From the time the unit that used it ends its activation, the ability will remain in play until that unit goes again, or it is used by another unit that could potentially use that Cryptic ability, or if the opponent incapacitates that unit. Think about this. You're running a Chronomancer. By the end of the first turn, your Apprentic and your Chronomancer has both dropped the Nanomine to reduce enemy movement near their drop zone, and a unit has gained Feel No Pain and the Square to their movement. Before this buff, those would go away in the following turn, and you would need to assess whether or not the Apprentic or Chronomancer would need to go right away to re-up the buff or debuff. This could screw over activation sequences. This is now no longer an issue. The Nanomine and buff would persist until the unit goes again, or that specific ability is cast again, or if the enemy is able to bring down either the Apprentic or the Chronomancer that cast them. Now you can keep these strong units in your back pocket for later activation without issue. This also heavily buffs the other 2 Cryptics. In my opinion, it even makes the Psychomancer much more viable since its area effect abilities will now persist. Consider that you can have your Apprentic become a pentagon-wide field of anti-crit and no rerolls, and just leave him somewhere for the following turn. You can also pick a big scary unit and make it super injured through 2 turns on 1 cast. This is going to be huge for the Hierotek and should bring their win rate up a good bit. I'll definitely be playing them more. Last up for Season 2 are the Kasrkin. This was interesting to see. I was wondering how they could be buffed going forward, since the elite function made it hard to balance, I felt. Games Workshop has decided that the units should all be made more hardy. They are now all at 8 wounds, with 9 for the Sergeant. Better than most Guardsmen. You will also now generate an extra 2 elite points per strategy phase. These are just passive, so as long as the Sarge is alive, you will generate 4 per round. This is nice, as the usual strat is to set up for a big turn 2. By the end of that, you are usually looking at an elite pool of maybe 2 points left, unless you get lucky. If your opponent countered that play, you might as well pack it in. Turn 3 and 4 will just be a neutral downhill drive. The extra points should be useful in allowing at least 1 more turn to feel good as a Kasrkin. On top of this, the Kasrkin now have a real melee option. Still not great, but a 3-attack 3/4 weapon will always feel better than a 3-attack 2/3, especially since this is a way to get around needing to perfectly time a 4Cadia play. These changes should hopefully allow the Kasrkin to take on tougher opponents. I'm not sure if it is enough, but it is certainly a step in the right direction. The Q1 2023 Dataslate, in a lot of ways, is game-changing. It seems to be doing a lot to bring scoring closer for some of the teams that have issues in that department. It also seems to be trying to limit damage mitigation in several ways. It will be interesting to test these changes out in some future battle reports. Thanks for watching. If you are interested in tabletop games like Kill Team and hopefully some others in the future, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Maybe the like if you're feeling saucy. Let me know in the comments what you think we might see in this quarter for tournament play. It should be interesting. I am Kimmerix, and I'll see you in the next one.